Alrighty, well, welcome, and bienvenidos, mis amigas, to Tech and Tequila, where tech talk meets real talk. And we mix, of course, business strategy with a bold pour of tequila. I'm your host, Kat Lopez Shelby, digital nomad, techie chica, tech trailblazer, and of course, the founder of Shelby Technology Solutions. Each week, I have the privilege to sit down with trailblazers, thought leaders, and everyday innovators to explain how technology shapes our work, our communities, and of course, the level of freedom that we have. Whether you're securing your systems, scaling your business, or sipping your way through strategy, this show is your space to learn, laugh, and level up. And of course, today's episode is no exception because I am joined by the one and only Mr. Jamison Powell from Vcom Solutions. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I would appreciate the warm introduction. I'll pay you later.
That's right. So for those who don't know, I have known Mr. Jamison for a while. We obviously work in the channel, and I've known you through a couple of different things. But for per se, someone who hasn't known you through the channel, doesn't exactly know who you are, I'm going to give you a brief moment, kind of introduce yourself and let us know a little more about Vcom.
Sure. So Jamison Powell, based in the great country of Texas. I've been in this technology space for 2 decades now. It is surprising now that I say that out loud. I started all the way in high school. Started interning with Samsung and Applied Materials in high school. Then in college, went to Dell, went to UTA where I got my information systems degree. And then, technology has just always been part of my life. So for the last 20 years or so, I've been in and out of the technology space, mainly in the hard asset circuit business, and now spanning into the SaaS marketplace, where I'm starting to understand there's two different worlds that are now combining. So, looking forward to the conversation today.
Yes. And before we, of course, get too deep into the conversation with Mr. Jamison and talk about obviously software as a service and what Vcom has to solution, this would not be Tech and Tequila if we didn't try a tequila. And I know you're probably saying, oh my gosh, Kat, pantalones again. But you know what? Sometimes you just can't have enough of a good thing. I don't know what kind of tequila you like, Jamison, but if you haven't tried pantalones, I definitely say give it a try. So I have a nice anejo here. In case you're curious, yes, I am wearing pants because their whole theme about Pantalones Tequila is, of course, tequila where your pants are optional, apparently. But, I love it since obviously Mr. Jamison is in, well, so the great country of Texas or the great state of Texas. There's nothing like Pantalones, who was founded by none other than Matthew McConaughey, or I should say co-founded by Matthew McConaughey and his beautiful wife, Camilla Alves McConaughey. All right to go word. And of course, it's bold, organic, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, which is very, very important. So it has all the things that you want with nothing you don't want. Of course, it is absolutely considered organic and fabulous for you. And it's great and wonderful. And y'all can all laugh about my super pink shot glass that I have here for during the day. But the nice thing is, of course, in case you don't know this, anejo is aged for over a year in oak barrels, which gives it its warm, smooth, and the vibe with hints of caramel, vanilla, and dried fruit. It is definitely a tequila for, let's say, the older crowd or grown folks, more mature people. And of course, people who close deals by the day and sip slow at night. So what is your favorite tequila, Mr. Jamison?
I prefer anything non-additive. As I get older, a little more conscious of what I put in my body, and usually my decisions are dictated by how I'm going to feel the next day. So, right now, I'm a tequila guy as well. G4 is probably the one I buy the most frequent. But again, anything non-additive is right up
Mhm.
my alley.
Absolutely. I love it. And of course, I can tell you the one thing that I like about Pantalones is it is smooth and yet still gives you a little bit of spicy. So I like to say this is the best drink for the golden hour, sunset, a smooth glass, maybe and have this per se on the rocks. Of course, Pantalones tequila is made with 100% organic blue Weber agave from the highlands of Jalisco. So it's clean, flavorful, and crafted where care. And of course, they have Blanco, Reposado, and of course, the Anejo that I have. So, let's try it. Definitely give it a try. I think it's win. Now, of course, now that we're all ready, we've had our tequila, let's get into what I like to call the meat and papas of tech and tequila. And that is, of course, finding a little more about Vcom solutions. Now, I know, Jameson, you've been over there for a little while now, but Vcom's core value is simplifying IT lifecycle management. So, how do you help channel partners communicate the ROI to the value of CIOs, IT leaders, and of course, people who are overwhelmed with this huge vendor sprawl that you have?
Yeah, so I think number one, you have to think about where we are as a world and the economy that supports us, and usually that lends itself to an IT staff that is no longer overflowing with help. As a matter of fact, they're drowning. They have not only more to manage, but usually less money to manage it with, which equals the only real solution for that is to leverage something to help you out. I've oftentimes thought about technology from a perspective of just volume. There's a
Mhm.
volume of SaaS application. There's a volume of hard assets. There's a volume of things that need to be managed. And again, we're talking about a company, a resource group that's usually understaffed. So the only real way to make that happen is to have some type of software that manages it all, a place
Mhm.
that you can find, buy, and manage everything IT, and that's kind of where VCOM comes into play. Also, kind of the ingredient to why I came to this specific story, and that's kind of how I communicated is, again, I've sold hard assets all of my career. What I have noticed is that in many cases, people stop making decisions when they stop having information. They just stay with what they have. Status quo is usually our biggest competition. So
Mhm.
for me, I just wanted to get on the side of a tool that enable people to make decisions based on data, not opinions, and accurately forecast those. Because now we have, um, as IT used to be just a line item on the budget, it is now the business, right? It is one of the top three budget items for any business in the world. So
Mhm.
again, you've got a limited amount of resources. You have so many things to manage. You just need a system and software to manage them all for you.
No, and I really like that, but before we get too much into, let's say, the weeds or understanding a little more about
Mhm.
exactly what VCOM has to offer, for someone who's never heard of VCOM solutions before, how would you describe them and how would you describe the company?
It's interesting. It depends on who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to someone who is familiar in the channel in technology, I say, imagine a carrier, an aggregator, and a TIM platform had a baby. That baby would be VCOM, right? It is an ability to, again, to find, buy, and manage all in one spot. That's
Mhm.
also my answer to what differentiates us to the market, and I think that's kind of the answer. Is we can really number one manage, right? Because that's the overlaying architect and what our true value is. The second part is you have to source, right? No matter how you think about it or who you are, you have to source the
Mhm.
tools that you need to do the job. So to have one place where you can kind of do that, to me, is kind of the grand old story of efficiency. And then you
Mhm.
back into that with traditionally IT and accounting, IT and HR, all of the desperate departments kind of played silo, right? They had their own business together, but then at the end of the day, when it's budget season, they have to come together and kind of figure out what they've been doing the last year. Well, this just gives a platform where dynamically we can track on all ends what we're spending, what is it accounting for, and then the performance of those assets. So we can
Mhm.
validate what we've spent, we can understand and forecast what we will be spending, and then we can put value on top of all those things.
Yeah, and I think people would be shocked because there's still so many organizations that are managing like their IT spend manually. They don't have something like this. So how does
Sure.
VCOM centralize IT spend management give customers more of a competitive edge? Like, what do you see that I would say it's kind of like what is the real benefit, like, or I don't want to say life changing, but something for somebody who has everything on a spreadsheet, kind of like what you were
Sure.
talking about, this is going to like open their eyes and be like, oh, this is what we're spending. This is what we have.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think you got to think about it from this perspective. A spreadsheet can accomplish things, right? I mean,
Mhm.
a spreadsheet has been the function of many for decades now. So I don't want to undermine the ability of a spreadsheet, but what a spreadsheet can't do is it's not dynamic. It's not accounting for the
Mhm.
items that have to be accounted for on Christmas, on New Year's Eve, on a birthday, when someone's sick. A system is living, breathing 24/7, 365. It doesn't get sick, it doesn't take vacation. So it allows the same thing as what a spreadsheet could accomplish, but in a more dynamic form.
Mhm.
It's staying truly accountable for what's happening today. And the benefit of that is when you think about the economics behind most businesses, usually there's some form of investment from someone who is not aware of the business and what it does on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
This gives the managers of the business, the owners of that information, ability to very quickly go assess where they are, very quickly be accountable for the decisions they've made in the past. And also at the end of the day, back to the original point, it's just a system that never dies. It never gets sick. It never goes home. So, really, I think it encompasses what everyone wants, and that's accurate data all the time.
Mhm. Well, and I can imagine too, if you're relying per se on a outdated spreadsheet or one or two
Mhm.
people within the organization to keep up with everything, let's be honest. I mean, I can speak more from a sales rep's point of view, but we all know how many people are supposed to put everything in their like sales funnel and show all this. And they're like, nah, I'm doing my job. I'm out here. So, you
That's
know,
right.
it's, I could not tell you the number of people that when I go in and I start talking to them about their tech stack, they have no idea when their contracts are up. I
That's
mean,
right.
they kind of know what they're paying for, but they don't have this whole overview. And that's basically what you guys are helping with or allowing them to be able to see. Because when you talk about data and understanding it.
Yeah, and another element, Kat, is I always think about it from this perspective. There's also things that we can't see that happen on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
For my salespeople out there, everyone's had an occurrence where you've talking to John at company X for 6 weeks and you've designed a solution and everything makes sense and all the buying signs are there, budget has been approved, and then on Monday, John's no longer with the company.
Mhm.
Well, without a system, what you're doing is you're starting a new integration, a new relationship with whoever is taking over for John. And usually that's not only going to be 6 weeks, but it's going to be months because you got to first get to know them. There's a relationship to be established. And right, wrong, or indifferent, in most cases, when someone's coming over to take over the infrastructure, all they're doing is fact finding. They're trying to figure out
Mhm.
what's what and where's where, right? For us, because we have a system that backs up information, instead of re-engaging and restarting a conversation, we now become the source of truth for that new CIO, for that new director of IT. So they're
Mhm.
not starting at ground zero. As a matter of fact, all of the work that we've done previous to this, we can back up those decisions by the data that we've used the first time. So it really does become a dynamic tool, especially for advisors, because I do sell indirectly to present to your customer, hey,
Mhm.
regardless of your personnel, regardless of your staff today, what I will be doing for the next couple of weeks or however long that engagement is, it will serve as your voice of truth for from here on out. So as well as it is dynamic and becomes a tool for people internally, it also becomes a huge tool if I'm an advisor as I'm pitching to a customer, because now again, we all know the best way to sell is to
Mhm.
educate. You're no longer the source of I don't know. You're the source of, well, here's all of my circuits, here's the term data, this is my utilization, this is how much I've spent over the past year or so. It really does become a tool for both internal and external use. So for me, it's just a force multiplier. One of the reasons, again, why I came to Vcom.
Yeah. And I think you touched on something right there, kind of is, what are some of the most common blind spots that businesses have, like when they're managing their cloud or their connectivity? And, how do you guys particularly help uncover and solve those?
Yeah, so I think number one, the biggest, I would say, detractor from anything, whether it's me talking to a customer, me talking to an advisor who's also selling a service, is status quo. It's doing what I did before because it's just the way things are done. I always say this, usually, I'm not talking to someone unless they've uncovered an issue. And if we're going to do exactly the same thing as you did before, then more than likely this same issue is not only going to repeat itself, but it's going to grow over time. So there is an advantage to not only attracting and tracking your information, but also, there's a timestamp when problems arise to, every single day you leave them unattended to. Usually we can equate that to a cost of some sort. So ROI is a big conversation in most of my engagements because, again, we're talking about a non tangible asset. I can't touch lifecycle management, I can't touch software, but I can touch dollars, not me physically, but the people who own the projects that we're managing. They're also accountable for their spend. So it becomes a tool to them again, not only to see what they're doing, but to have kind of a touch into what this could be. Our typical challenge is going to be just the person who wants to stay with the spreadsheet. My challenge back to them is the same as ever. At some point, you're going to have to go on vacation. At some point, you're going to lose track of things. And I always throw in the caveat of 2025, the biggest line item that grows as much as any is SaaS applications. The barrier to entry is no longer the world as which we knew as change management. Change control is no longer a thing. If you've got a credit card and a phone, you can instantly ingest and start using an application. And that becomes a little bit of a rogue environment to manage. So again, having an overarching system that manages it, makes everything accountable, tracking spend, tracking utilization, it just keeps everyone honest in the business.
Mhm. No, and I think you hit on the thing because we all know that lots of the things that IT deal with is, the number of different SaaS applications that they have, like the sprawl of it, as well as shadow IT, are a huge pain
Mhm.
point, especially for your, let's say, smaller IT staff. I would say universally, lots of people want to fill roles, but we all know that companies have tons of roles open and they don't have the IT staff, especially CTOs, CIOs, and who was going to say your lead IT person doesn't have the staff that they want. You
That's
know,
right.
how does Vcom solution help that, address those governances, those licenses, those things happening within an organization?
So, number one, everything is tracked and accounted for within the software. So that is inclusive of network mobility, collaboration, SaaS, hardware, you name it. Anything IT is kind of tracked and managed. The advantage to that is we also have an ability to attach that to an asset. Now, for us, an asset can be a state, it can be a person, it can be a place, whatever you name asset to you. We can attach it to that. So then at the end of the year or at any time, you can hit a few buttons and know what that asset is using and how much it's costing you to support this asset. So it becomes a much more granular conversation. And oftentimes, I think the biggest kind of challenge that comes from that is, well, you're just trying to replace my job. Well, I push back and say, well, if you're a CTO or a director of IT, 9 times out of 10, not only what you're paid for, but what you love to do is not staying on the phone with the carrier. It is not tracking down a BTN. It is not trying to figure out if this is a static IP or DHCP. Uh, Not that those things aren't important, but at this point, there's so much volume in that it can become cumbersome. And usually, what happens, just like anything, if you're doing something that doesn't require a bunch of thought and more so resources to go find it over and over again, the chances of you making a mistake grow as the time goes on. Where again, if we're comparing this to the software, scale is no issue for a software platform, really. It's just a matter of volume change. So again, I think it's just an ultimate efficiency thing. You do have to overcome some of the, I would say, nuances of what they think is going to happen. What they think is going to happen is my job's going to be taken. The reality is, you're literally going to use this tool to do your job better. You
Mhm.
still need a human to interact on the other side to make sense of all of this. So it is not a replacing of people. It is just getting you back to doing what I would
Mhm.
assume you wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah, and I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, even if we just talk about like contracts being up, we all know,
Mhm.
and we won't call out any particulars, where customers get these email like, "Hey, your contract's about to be up," knowing darn well they either just re-signed or it's not near closing. And a lot of my customers like, I don't know. I mean, we signed with so and so big ISP over here, but I mean, we've been with them forever, so we're not even sure. We got 15 different locations. What are they talking about? Um, and I think that kind of what you were talking about with, whatever position you're in, it's not replacing you, but it's helping you because, you know, we're human. You get a new circuit, you get this, an IP changes. It didn't get changed on the spreadsheet. We'll put in
Hmm.
parentheses. It just, the information didn't get updated. And that costs you time. And nobody universally likes to be on the phone with customer service trying to figure this information out.
That's right. So
And,
one of the
and
things we
mhm,
oftentimes say at Vcom is we save you time, information, and money,
mhm,
um, because all those things are tangible in most cases, right? And you think about it from this perspective, every person in IT is now required to do more and more every single day. But what's
mhm,
not happening is they're not removing the other tasks that you were required to do before.
mhm,
So at the grand core of it, you have a volume of things that need to be done, that need to be tracked for, that you're accountable for, and you have so much time in the day to get these things done. You can't recreate time. You can't add time to your day. You
mhm,
also can't add an arm to a body. So you got to do more with less. And the only way for that to happen is to have some platform that manages all these things for you.
mhm.
Because again, tomorrow someone's going to add another task to you that you're going to be responsible for. They are not removing anything that you were previously responsible for.
Yeah, exactly. No, I couldn't say. So, kind of along the same line right there is I know that y'all's platform has automation and self service. So, how does that help, especially clients who want better control of their services without adding headcount, or they're having difficulty adding headcount because that's just as much a problem as people who are
Oh,
like, I
for
can't
sure.
add. It's we
Hmm.
can't fill these positions fast enough. I know that from West Texas because I can tell you all the time, people will either be job hopping or they're like, well, we have these IT positions open, but we just don't have the people to fill them right now.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think you can think about that from a couple different perspectives. Um, Number one, the need for a platform is universal. If you think about
Mhm,
shopping, there's a reason why Amazon is Amazon. There's a reason why online shopping and Black Friday and Cyber Monday are things. It's an accessibility thing, right? It's a I need it right now. And that's exactly what the platform is. It's a I need it right now. So do I wait on a Saturday morning when it's 4 a.m. and I've got a problem, but my carrier may be on vacation? Maybe not, right? I need to make something things happen. So I need an
mhm,
ability to self-serve. Now, the other end of that spectrum is all of the customers that I'm dealing with are brought through an advisor, right? So I'm
mhm,
indirectly selling all this. So I have to consider that my advisor also wants to be engaged in that self-service, not only to manage, but to just to understand the infrastructure that's being built, agnostic of their actions, right? Agnostic of my actions, because the system is doing this. So we do have stopgaps in our system that say, your customer A inquired about circuit B at location Z, and it sends an email to the advisor. There's two cool things about that. Number one, it gets the customer what they need the fastest, right? That's the fastest way to get it done. It's already moving. There's no human intervention needed. Number
mhm,
two, as an advisor, you want to keep the touch points up. You want to stay attached to what your customer's doing. So it also creates an environment and a task, self-driven and self-appointed, for an advisor to say, hey, John's talking about site A. Let me have a conversation with them about that. Usually it's going to come, hey, I have this problem, but while I have you on the phone, what else do you have? So when I
mhm,
talk about force multiplier, it is not just for me as it pertains to why I can't close the deal with the customer. It's also for the advisor. It is a self appointed and quite honestly, it's already paid for environment for an advisor to create a pipeline for themselves.
mhm.
So that notification keeps everyone in the loop. It also gets the customer what they need fastest. And again, without a person to start or in that process, this is simply a notification to the people in the process that things are going, but the system is handling everything on its own.
No, I like that because, just going back to, time is money
Hmm.
at the end of the day. So if you're spending a lot of time trying to figure out information that should just be at your fingertips, so to speak, you're just hurting yourself. Now, I know that you recently stepped into a leadership role at Vcom. How are you personally helping partners like myself to
Hmm.
not just sell products, of course, but, you know, helping with the entire IT operation solutions. So I guess this in essence is a what's in it for me.
Well, I think two different kind of stories when I think about that. Number one, the advisor who sells one product to five different people makes a lot less money to the advisor who sells five different things to one person.
Mhm.
That's just the math that has been worked out in this IT space. And usually that comes because you're just not entrenched into the account. You just don't have the level and depth of knowledge that would keep you there as an advisor and that would multiply your business while you're there. So that's kind of the first piece. The second piece I think about from a perspective of why am I here? You're here to block and tackle to a certain extent and protect your customers from all the literally thousands of salespeople that have a product to sell.
Mhm.
I always position it like this: there are 15 ways to skin the cat when it comes to technology.
Mhm.
Are some technologies greater than the next? Sure. But they're usually use case based, right? It's not I need this because of this. It's I need it because I have a problem and I need it to be fixed. So if you take all that away and you put everybody at equal, the only thing that really separates yourself is the experience you're giving to your customer. And that's coming from me or the advisor.
Mhm.
So the way I explain it is the more control you have, the more touch you have with your account, the more you're going to sell. The more you
Mhm.
sell, the more revenue you gain. Specifically with Vcom, we do a revenue share model where we're
Mhm.
equally loaded. We're
Mhm.
making money together. So that gives the advisor an ability to look at true costs and see the true arithmetic and how this is going to be supported. There's more of a conversation around operational costs, operational efficiency. What do we need? What don't we need? It allows us to shape deals that aren't necessarily what's on the truck. It allows
Mhm.
us to get really custom, and usually what that entails is a larger payout to an advisor, and also a much better solution for the customer. So it's a win-win where you're giving a solution to your customer that number one takes care of their solution today, number two can take care of their problem tomorrow, but number three gives them information and insight that they don't even know they need until next year. That's
Mhm.
where the software comes into play. Is it's a forecast of what could be, it's a forecast of what should be, and really for anyone who's managing that, and I'm at this point I'm speaking from the perspective of an advisor, you want this information because on one hand, it becomes, hey, I'm the customer. Here's a source of information. Here's what I've spent over the last 12 months. Here are the optimization results from all of the mobile
Mhm.
devices. Here are the optimization results from all my SD-WAN units. Super fruitful for a customer.
Mhm.
For an advisor, hey, my customer is embarking on a voice over IP project. Hey, I know they spent this amount of money on mobile last year. Are there gaps I can find? So
Mhm.
it really is one and the same and an advantage for everyone involved. Number one, and as an advisor, you kind of see what the spend trends are. You see what projects are leaking and what's not because you're seeing those finances and you're seeing the variance of how much you spent month over month. For the customer, you've also seen that same data and you can apply it as well. Especially when you think about most businesses these days are in some form of M&A activity. There's probably some PE back in somewhere. There's going to be people who ask you about your company and you have to give this information, supply this data, and they may or
Mhm.
may not know what you do. So you have to be able to explain that away without assumption of knowledge. And the only true way to do that is data. Numbers don't lie. It is the
Mhm.
universal language of everybody. So I back it all with that statement is you have to know what you're spending, you have to know what you're spending it on, and you have to be able to be accountable for that dollar. The only way to do that is a system. If I go buy a circuit by myself and I manage it by myself, could you be accurate? Sure. Is a carrier going to charge me, $3 more? Possibly. But now I'm responsible for hunting that down versus utilizing a system where I'm tracking every ticket, I'm tracking every occurrence, I'm tracking everything as it pertains to not only the service, the contracts, the terms. So now I can come back with an educated response to whoever, no matter what the subject is. And I know everything that's going on. So really, again, I come back to the source of truth. It is the information, I guess, highway when it comes to IT,
Mhm.
and everybody's needing it regardless if you think it. You're
Mhm.
using it no matter what.
Yeah, and I think you really, and I'm sure hit the nail on the head, so to speak, where it's a win-win situation for both yourself and the customer because they have the data and the visibility, but also you have that information as well. So like, okay, they've had to call 3 times about this circuit or this is going on. preemptively, I mean, I don't want to say you can prepare to strike, but if it's something that needs to be addressed, you'll know about it versus kind of
Hmm.
finding out on the back end, so to speak.
That's right.
Now, of course, we were just talking about that, and that leads into a lot of businesses that I have worked with are like, well, we're just going to go with this particular supplier because we have, this, and this with them. And having it all with one company makes things simple. And I always say that sometimes that means that you're trying to take a round peg and shove that bad boy into a square, opening, so to speak. So what, as far as Vcom helps with visibility across, of course, multiple carriers, vendors, and platforms? Like, how does it aggregate and simplify the view and, obviously help with those decisions? So you're not trying to pick this one solution because it keeps you with company A when it may
Hmm.
not be the right fit.
Yeah, so I think number one, fundamentally, we're carrier agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter to us where the service is coming from because we're supplying an overlay of support on top of everything. So whether you source from us or agnostic of us, we can kind of meet you where you are. You're speaking to a customer. That's
Mm-hmm.
also the same message to a partner. If you have a customer that's in between term, which is usually everyone, a
Mm-hmm.
coterminous world is almost non-existent these days. So how do you manage that in between? That's exactly where the software picks up because
Mm-hmm.
what it does is it ingests all that data, and then it normalizes that information. So an example is, for one bill, it could be 77 pages. There could be some nuances to that bill that are specific to that carrier. For the next carrier, it can be 58 pages, and there could be nuances to that carrier that are different from the next carrier. When we ingest the information, we normalize that data. So tax will literally say tax. Shipping will say shipping. Services will say services. We're removing all the nuances, all the triple play package, Black Friday specials, whatever have you, as an example, and it simply says what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a huge advantage to an advisor because most customers are going to say, I want my price before taxes and fees. If you're dealing in mobility, if you're dealing in network, that can be confusing. There's really no way to really estimate that outside of normalizing that data to where tax is in the tax bucket, services in the service bucket. That's what happens inherently through our software when we ingest that data
Mm-hmm.
is we normalize that data across the board. So it doesn't matter for us who the carrier is from a functional perspective as we support that service. It also doesn't matter to us as we ingest that data and then obviously give an output to the customer. For us, it simply comes across all neutral, all the same.
No, and I can imagine that just helps with, obviously, we keep talking about data because really that's what you're looking at. You're looking at your data, like what are we spending? What do we have? Where are gaps? And it allows, you, of course, as the trusted advisor to say, here's the gaps that I see. And as well, you've got the data points to back that up. Where the other side of that is also with a, CIO, CTO, whoever is trying to, let's say, push forth a project, it allows them the same thing to be able to say, hey, this is why we need to move this way. This is what we're looking at. So,
Yeah. And I'll give you a good example of that. And again, it's one of the reasons I moved is because as an example, let's just imagine a customer comes to you as an advisor and says, hey, I want to do a voice project, a voice over IP. I've got an on-premise system and I need to get in the cloud.
mhm,
And you go and you do that engagement and you get time for the arithmetic and hey, this is just too much. I can't afford it right now. With VCOM visibility,
mhm,
an ability to see the entire budget, I may see that, hey, the mobile spend has a variance of 300% or so across the last 12 months. So what if you, Mr. Customer, yeah, I'd love to do this voice over IP project. You don't have the budget today, which usually stops 90% of
mhm,
deals and then people just move on. Well, in this world, I can say, well, hold on, your mobility variance is 300% over the last year. How can we attack that so then I can go find you budget for the voice over IP project that you would like to do?
mhm,
That gives me the freedom to go find budget that is no longer there. No one assumed that there would be budget for this voice over IP project until next year when I have to resubmit everything and I could or could not get approved. But
mhm,
what's a better story to tell? I went and optimized another area of the business to find
mhm,
budget for this project to then optimize another part of the business. I killed
mhm,
two birds with one stone. For the customer, that's a great story to tell. For
mhm,
the advisor, that's one less deal that fell through the crack because you couldn't find budget.
mhm. Well, and I was going to say that makes the customer look like the hero because they've already
Hmm.
optimized something that nobody was even paying attention to, or even, and if they were, obviously they weren't, able to attack it and get it taken
That's
care
right.
of. So
That's right.
definitely, for sure. Um, we only have a couple more questions, and of course, I ask this of almost everybody. But what industries or size business or business do you feel like gets the most benefit from VCon's tools and are basically like, I would say a quick win, but kind of like a no-brainer. Like, this is really where we shine.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm going through an exercise right now. We're developing our, ICP, right? The perfect
Hmm.
customer for us. And I always frame it up, there is no one answer to it. The reality is you got to have enough disorganization in order for it to be of value to you. That's number one. Um, so I always frame it from this perspective. Will we be great for, John's electric company that has two circuits, one phone, and a couple SaaS licenses? Sure, but he doesn't have a bunch of pain to deal with and probably can, spend another 10 minutes and fix that. On the
Hmm.
other end of the spectrum, if I'm talking about, Ford or Coca-Cola, they probably have a big enough budget to fix the problems that we would fix with the software. Everybody in between, I think, is a perfect customer. It doesn't matter what industry you're in.
Hmm.
I would say the ones that are the hottest, again, anything with M&A activity, because they have to manage at so many different levels. You think about franchises, you think about healthcare, you think about anything with mandated processes that have to have other people approve the way they do business. That's going to be super huge because they're always going to know about it. They're going to need to know about information. They're going to need to know about budget, and they're going to need to know quickly. It can't be a hey, I'll give you this in 3 weeks. Usually, you're going to need to get that quickly. So I think any business makes sense. The more you have, obviously, the more it makes value to you. But that doesn't mean that even if you don't have a lot, it doesn't make sense for you because ultimately, and if I'm a good steward of the money, I want to make sure I'm preparing for tomorrow. And in order to prepare for tomorrow, I have to be accountable for all the things that I'm doing today. So it does make sense for someone who may not have a lot of disorganization. I do think it lends itself to someone who has a disparate team, right? You have low resources, you really have to do more with less, which is probably everybody in this world. So I, very generally say the mid market, which again is the largest growing segment in America. But that can extend to north or south of that as well. Obviously, on the low end, probably doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. I would say the same for your Fortune 10, Fortune 100 companies. There's some squeezing that has to be done. Maybe it's an individual project here or there. And that's why this is another good point to call out about Vcom. It's not all or nothing. It could be project based. It could be I have a specific need. It could be I want to get my mobility environment cleaned up. I've got 12 different network carriers I need to consolidate support. It could be I have no visibility into my expenses and accounting's not talking to IT, and it could be just an organizational challenge as well. So I don't think there is a silver bullet. This is the perfect scenario. I think the perfect scenario for us is one that only makes sense for the customer, and we can meet them where they are. So I really call out the piece that we're not an all or nothing company. We're really focused on making sure we serve value. And if we don't see that value, and I've kind of been like this all my career, the one thing I'll say is I try to say no very quickly. And that is not to push people away, but that is to get them to something that makes better sense. Usually, if I'm saying no, it's because I've already thought about, well, what could have. And if it's not going to be the greatest experience, I just don't think it's the best for anyone. So that's kind of the long and short of it for me is I think it works for everybody. In between the small and super large companies is the perfect fit. If you've got a remote force, across the country geography, it's always going to make sense because you're usually going to have multiple carriers. But really, it's any and everyone because everybody needs the software to manage it.
No, absolutely. I think that's very apt because I think when you pointed out, we're probably not the best fit for some of maybe the smaller companies, but at the exact same time, you have someone that's, I like to call them medium. I'm sure they don't really appreciate that sometimes, but
Sure.
you've got someone that may have a small office staff, but has a bunch of people in the field or is managing a bunch of mobile devices and all this, that still could be a great fit for you guys
Hmm.
because I mean, I can tell you the number of people who are like, I don't know, we we just did a thing and we've got 10 mobile devices. We have no clue where they are. We don't know how long we've had them on here, and we're, being billed for something. It's crazy. So definitely.
Yeah.
Obviously, I would be remiss in the current environment without talking about that everybody is kind of tightening down their budgets just a tad bit these days. So one of the things that I know Vcom has helped partners lead with can be, of course, cost savings and operational efficiency. Now, how do you feel that really allows for you guys to answer those things? Cost savings, operational efficiency, without, of course, commoditizing the solution, so to speak.
Yeah, so it's always a slippery slope, and usually you're, a step over one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say the vast majority of projects in general, regardless if it's IT, if you're in operations, you're trying to save money. I don't care
Mm-hmm.
what you do or what company it is, that's your job. At the same time, I think we have to be very careful to not attach everything to tangible dollars,
Mm-hmm.
because there are soft costs that you can save, and you may end up spending more dollars, right? Um, I think again, I harken back to the same conversation of, you got to know where you are, you got to know where you went, or excuse me, where you came from. You got to know
Mm-hmm.
where you're going, and that has to be matched with some finances. When it comes to cost savings, inherently through visibility, you're going to find cost savings because, again, most IT infrastructures have been functioning rogue from a spending perspective for a very long time. So I don't think you really have the biggest challenge of, I'm already optimized and then I want to also save money. That's a very rare occurrence. It's usually, I'm not been optimized and I'd like to save money.
Mm-hmm.
I would say for us, we're never going to lead with cost savings because, again, I think too many people attach it to a dollar, where I may be able to save you 15%, but gain you 30% ROI on, OTE hirings. That's a
Mm-hmm.
big dollar amount that I can calculate. So usually, when we do solutions, we back it up with some form of ROI calculator that's
Mm-hmm.
inclusive of people time, spending time, really all of the things that kind of can contribute to your overall spend. And we try to do that ROI holistically and not just how many dollars are you saving in a month.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, what that leads us down is a path that no one saw, and that's another solution. That's usually
Mm-hmm.
what happens when you start to have these conversations is, yeah, I came to you because of, I had a voice over IP project that I wanted to run, but by the way, I've got 45 million in direct TV I'm spending a year, and I have no way to manage that. I'm having 1,000 payments a month, and oh well, then there's an expense opportunity. It just really becomes a just shut up and listen, because usually when you get into conversations, they're going to tell you everything that you need to work on. For us, our advantage, especially with Vcom and our ability to source and also manage, we don't really have a left lane or a right lane that we have to stick in. So for us, it's really simply about, being the advocate of the customer and helping them where they are. If it's, hey, I need to save some money, well, let's dig into where do you think the savings is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Again, inherently through ingesting all their information, we're going to see, month over month what they're spending on each area of IT. And then we're also going to see the variances, which one is standing out. What you may find out, again, as I gave the example of the voice over IP project, it may not even be the budget item that you thought was actually leaking as much as it was. We
Mm-hmm.
could actually focus on other things, and we're only doing that by data. It's no longer assumption.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I, I shy away from saying we're going to save you money, because I do think that it commoditizes the conversation. But
Mm-hmm.
inherently through the process, that's naturally what happens. So, on one hand, I don't love it. On the other hand, it happens naturally.
Mm-hmm. No. And I mean, I think at the end of the day, obviously, I think that, time, money, and of course, return on investment. So what are people going
Hmm.
to get out of it is
That's right.
extremely important. Well, of course, Jamison, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast and obviously
Absolutely.
sharing your wisdom and sharing everything about Vcom. I always appreciate it when someone comes on and they help bring both clarity and a solution that maybe some people haven't heard of. So thank you. If there were 3 things that you could leave our listeners to say, hey, when we think of Vcom, this is what I want you guys to think of, what would that be?
I'd say the 3 main pillars. Number one, any mobile environment. Number two, any network infrastructure. Everything IT. And then the last piece is just an expense approach, right? An
Mhm.
ability to account for those things, to know what you're spending, to track them and then recognize them. I think those are kind of the three entry points to the VCOM atmosphere. Of course, there are other things we can help on, but to me, those are the three easiest and most recognizable. Those are also, quite honestly, the biggest leaks in every IT infrastructure in the world.
Mhm. Absolutely. I know for sure mobility can be. So,
Yeah.
like I said, I want to thank you for joining today. And of course, to everyone listening, thank you very much. If you love this episode, of course, do me a favor. Definitely give us a like, leave a comment or review. Of course, I prefer positive ones. And of course, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We've got more amazing guests, bold combos, and of course, we will have more tequila coming your way. And I want you all to be a part of that. So until next time, keep it techie, try some great tequila, and keep sipping smart. Salud.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Tech and Tequila. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. To stay updated about all things tech and more, don't forget to visit us at our website, shelbyts.com. If you loved what you heard, remember to show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our podcast. Your 5-star ratings and reviews mean the world to us and help us to reach more listeners just like you. So muchas gracias again for joining us with Tech and Tequila. Thank you so much. You learned a lot about tech, and maybe you had a nice drink of tequila.